Hi everyone, it's Eric Lalas. Today we're gonna study about another opening as black, and it's the two knights defense where white moves his knight to g5 on his fourth move. It starts with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, knight to f6, and here white moves his knight to g5, threatening to fork the rook and the queen. Black answers with d5, white takes, and the knight moves to a5, usually chooses to make the opening a gambit. Black can actually recapture the pawn, but I would not suggest it because it's too risky. White might continue with d4, or this knight might take the f7 pawn, which is the fried liver attack. The king should take the knight, and white gives a check, forking the king and the knight. So the only way for the king to defend his knight is to move it to e6, knight to c3, giving more pressure on the knight. So this is considered too difficult for black to defend. The game continues by protecting the other knight. a3, threatening this knight, check, king moves, knight takes rook, knight takes, c6, threatening this knight, but you can give a double check with the knight and the bishop. King moves, and knight takes rook. Let's go back. d4 here. Black can give a check with his bishop. c3. This bishop has to move back, attacking this knight, but white can just sacrifice this knight by taking this pawn. King takes, check, and again he has to protect the knight. Castle king side, knight to a5, trying to remove this bishop, and black has to do something with this pawn, so he has to protect it with this bishop, and then white moves his rook to e1. And so by taking this pawn, white can give a very strong attack. We'll just continue with knight to a5, attacking the bishop. White can give a check here, or he can try the Murphy variation by moving this pawn to d3. Black answers with h6, attacking the knight. He has to go back. e4, still attacking the knight. And obviously white cannot take this pawn because he'll lose his bishop. Queen to e2, pinning this pawn. Black will just happily take the bishop. Pawn takes. Bishop to c5, preparing kingside castle. So check, c6, exchange, bishop to e2, or if he moves his queen to f3, black has strong attack by h6, or rook to b8. If the bishop retreats to e4, black moves his bishop to g4, or he can threaten the knight with h6. Knight moves back, e4, queen to e2, again pinning the pawn. Bishop to d6, preparing to castle. d3, castle kingside, pawn takes, knight takes, bishop to e3, and rook to e8. Let's go back to the position where the bishop is attacking the queen. So if white decides to protect his queen with his knight, black pushes his pawn, white castles, or he can try to move his pawn here, attacking the bishop. Black will just exchange, check with the queen, king to f1, queen to e4, attacking the bishop, and threatening to fork the rook and the king. Queen takes pawn, queen takes bishop. If white decides to protect his queen by moving this pawn, black will be able to attack this diagonal with his queen. Bishop to f5, queen to e2, attacking this pawn. So black saves it by moving his queen here and attacking the bishop. Knight to c3, and then bishop to e7, preparing to castle kingside. And so if white castles, the pawn will take the knight, and if check, bishop to e7. Let's see what happens if the bishop moves to d3. Black answers with knight to d5. His queen is attacking the knight, and he's also preparing his knight to go here and attack this pawn. So the knight moves back, f5, knight to g3, and then knight to f4, attacking the pawn and the bishop. So the only way to save the pawn and the bishop is to move the bishop to f1, and right here white is behind development. Bishop to c5, preparing to take his queen here. c3, preventing the queen to move here, and actually he's trying to give a fork here. Bishop retreats, d4, attacking the knight. The knight retreats, bishop to d3, attacking the pawn with this bishop and with this knight. So black just castles. b4, attacking the knight. Knight moves back, castle kingside, and pawn takes pawn. Let's go back to the main line. Here bishop moves to e2, then black threatens the knight, has to retreat to f3, or he can retreat to h3, which is the Steinitz variation, but we will not discuss this variation in this video. Black continues to chase the knight. Knight to e5, queen to c7, still attacking the knight. He has to protect it with the pawn, or he can try to move his knight to c4. Black will just exchange knights. Bishop to d6, and followed by castle kingside. Let's continue with f4 here. Black captures the pawn. Knight recaptures. Bishop to d6. Castle kingside. Knight to g4, giving more pressure on the h2 pawn. White attacks the knight. Black protects it. And d4. Let's see what happens if he takes the knight. Pawn recaptures. d4. If white tries to save his knight, black gives a check. King to f2 and mate. Or if he moves his king to h1, bishop to e5 check. King to g1 check. Rook to f2, king to h2 check. King to f1 and mate. Going back, d4 here, and black captures the knight. So in this position, white decides not to capture the knight, and instead moving his pawn to d4. Black gives him a check. King to h1, bishop to g3, knight to c3, and knight to f2 check, forking the king and the queen. So white must sacrifice his rook. This is a brief study of the two knights defense. Hope you enjoyed the video, and have a nice weekend. Hi everyone, it's Eric Lalas. Today we're gonna study the Mughal-Jogo variation of the two knights defense, where white brings his queen to f3 and pinning the pawn at c6. I'll be showing you two good replies for this variation. The first is h6, threatening the knight. Knight to e4, knight to d5, knight to c3, or white can retreat his bishop to e4. Bishop to e7, preparing to castle. d3, freeing the dark squared bishop. Black castles, and then white castles. f5, threatening the knight. Knight to g3. Black develops this bishop. Rook to e1, threatening the pawn at e5. Bishop protects it, threatening the knight. Bishop to d2, and queen to b6. Going back to knight to c3, challenging this knight. Black will take the bishop instead. Knight takes. Bishop to b7. And not taking the knight with the queen, because by doing this you lose your queen with the check at f6. And so you should reply with the bishop to b7. Knight to e3, moving it to safety. Queen to d7. Castle kingside. Knight to c6, improving the knight. d3. Castle queenside. c3. g6. a4. And then b4. The second way to deal with the Volga variation is to bring the rook to b8. Attacking the bishop has to go back to d3, or if he plans to take the pawn here, knight takes bishop, check. Knight to d7, attacking the knight at g5, d3, protecting the knight. Bishop to e7, giving more pressure on the knight, and preparing to castle kingside. Knight to f3, bishop to b7, threatening the queen. Queen to a4, castle kingside. Knight to d2, knight to c5, threatening the queen. Queen to g4, f5, queen to h3, e4, exchange. Knight to e5, queen to d5, knight to c4, bishop to a6, b3, protecting the knight, e3, pawn takes. Now the f file is open, preventing white to castle kingside. Knight to e4, bishop to b2, bishop to c8, threatening the queen. g4, protecting it, and knight to f2, forking the queen and the rook. e4, queen to e6, saving his queen, and the knight captures the rook. Going back, right here, white moves his bishop to d3, bishop to d6, castle kingside, bishop to g4, threatening the queen. Queen to g3, or if he moves his queen to e3, black continues to chase the queen with the knight. Queen to g3, queen takes knight, f3, threatening the bishop, h5, pawn takes bishop, queen takes pawn, knight to c3, and check. Going back to queen to g3, black moves his bishop to c8, rook to e1, castle kingside, queen to h4, threatening the pawn at h7, h6, knight to e4, knight takes, queen takes, f5, queen to e3, and e4. This is a short study of the Bugul-Jowo variation of the two knights defense. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a nice day. Hi everyone, it's Eric Lalas. Today we're gonna study the Benko Gambit arising from the Benoni defense. White starts with d4, which is the queen's pawn opening. Black immediately develops his knight on f6, the Indian defense. c4, restricting black's option in attacking the center. c5, the Benoni defense, which I've already discussed. The idea is to provoke white's center. White advances his pawn on d5, and now black sacrifices a pawn on b5, and the idea is to open up the A and B file for his rooks. The main line continues by accepting the gambit. Black again offers his pawn on a6, and this video will be dealing with accepting the pawn, which is the main line, and advancing the pawn to b6, which I am more comfortable. First, let's take a look at the main line. Pawn takes pawn. Then black recaptures with his bishop, or if g6, preparing to fianchetto his bishop, white follows with g3, bishop to g7, bishop to g2, d6, white develops his knight on f3, then bishop takes the pawn, knight to c3, knight to d7, white castles, and then black castles. So going back, where black recaptures the pawn with his bishop, white continues by developing his knight on c3, g6, or black can play d6. White answers with knight to f3 and not e4. Then black will take the f1 bishop, so you have to take it with your king, and white will have to spend time castling artificially by moving his pawn to g3 and his king to g2, as in the line g6, g3, bishop to g7, king to g2, and black castles. And so right here, white plays knight to f3, black answers with g6, g3, bishop to g7, bishop to g2, knight to d7, white castles, and black castles. And so g6, knight to f3, d6, g3, bishop to g7, bishop to g2, knight to d7. White will now castle and black castles. After b5, pawn takes a6. Now let's take a look at the new idea, b6. According to Jerzy Konikowski's conclusion on his article, A Weapon Against the Volga Gambit, the continuation b6 is without doubt a strong weapon against the Volga Gambit. White avoids the complicated and far analyzed variations arising from b takes a6. Black continues by challenging the pawn at d5. White protects it with his knight. Black takes, white recaptures. Black takes, white recaptures with his queen, attacking the rook at a8. Knight to c6, protecting his rook. And white should watch out for knight to b4, knight to f3, developing his knight and threatening to go to e5, rook to b8, moving away from the pin, e4, freeing the light squared bishop, bishop to e7, develops the bishop and prepares to castle, bishop to c4, threatening mate at f7, black castles, white castles, rook takes pawn, and queen to h5, attacking on the king side. Another possible continuation for black is d6. White develops his knight on c3. Queen takes the pawn. Knight to f3. g6, preparing to fianchetto his bishop. e4. Bishop to g7. Knight to d2, preparing to go to c4. Or bishop to e2, and now black castles, white castles, bishop to g4, knight to d2, bishop takes, white recaptures with his queen. Going back to knight to d2, black castles, bishop to e2, preparing to castle, knight to d7, and now knight settles on c4, threatening the queen, queen to c7, bishop to f4, with a pin, knight to b6, with the idea to exchange the knights and settle his queen on c6. White refuses the trade, bishop to b7, and now white castles. And lastly, after b6, if black immediately captures the pawn with his queen, white develops his knight on c3, of course, d6, knight to f3, g6, preparing to fianchetto his bishop, e4, bishop to g7, knight to d2, preparing to settle on c4, black castles, bishop to e2, preparing to castle and preventing bishop to g4, knight to d7, knight to c4, As you have seen earlier, the queen goes to c7, bishop to f4, knight to b6, offering the trade, knight to e3, bishop to b7, and now white castles. This is a short study of the Benko Gambit. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something from it. Thanks and have a nice day.